Hello dear second year students, welcome to English classroom once again. I am S. Srikanth, Assistant Professor of English. In this video, let us take up a prose piece which is Letter from a Father to a Daughter. This is written by Jawaharlal Nehru. So, do you know who is Jawaharlal Nehru? Yes, we'll go. So in this picture you can see Jawaharlal Nehru. So he lived from 1889 to 1964. As you all know, he is the first Prime Minister of India and he ruled India in the capacity of Prime Minister for about 16 years. That's why he's also called as the architect of modern India. The policies that he implemented the socialism and the economic model he followed was socialism, and he followed friendly relationships, and he stood for non-violent methods and especially what we call peaceful negotiation with the neighbors. And he is the visionary and what we call who proposed the tenets of Panchashil, how we should behave ourselves and conduct ourselves with our neighbors. So that is a little bit of primary introduction about Jawaharlal Nehru. And more than a prime minister, more than a politician, is a statesman. He's a great scholar and a gifted writer. That's very important. Very good writer of English prose. And he was in the forefront of India's freedom struggle. His personality is a blend of humanism, nationalism, and internationalism. He's a blend of all the three. He's a very good human being and he's a great statesman. He knows what should be done, what should be given to India as a nation, and what is the role of India in the Committee of Nations internationally. Because of vision only, we have progressed, we have advanced to a larger extent in the sphere of space. Okay, a lot of space research has been taken by his efforts. So, as I told you, he's a great writer of English prose. He wrote two very great classics called The Discovery of India. Right, you should remember this name of the book. Glimpses of World History. Glimpses means some of the notable what we call events and incidents, so that you can have a peep into the world history. Okay. These are some of the books. The present letter or the present piece is a letter taken from his collection, Letters from a Father to a Daughter. This is a very famous, this is a collection of letters. This is a famous book actually, which is good also for young students, youngsters, and also the elders. The message that he carries through this book, Letters from a Father to his Daughter. Okay. They have the intention behind is to mold the character of youngsters. Okay, there are 30 odd letters intended to mold the characters, mold the personality of his daughter Indira Priyadarshini. As you can see, he has written letters to Indira Priyadarshini from the prison, from the central prison. That is the greatness. And who is Indira Priyadarshini? She is also popularly called as Indira Gandhi. Right, because she was adopted by Gandhiji, the father of our nation, and she's a great lady, great leader, who also ruled India as a prime minister for 13 years. Okay, she is known for her iron will and strong decision-making power. So all the girls will definitely do good to emulate this great lady, right? And about this letter. The present letter is one of the several letters written by Nehru. As I told you, this is one of the 30 odd letters written by Nehru from the prison to his daughter Indira Priyadarshini. Her original name is Indira Priyadarshini, but she came to be called as Indira Gandhi popularly. We all know that Indira Gandhi. We celebrate Indira Gandhi's birthday as Women's Day. Okay, the central prison. From the central prison Nainital on 30th October 1930 on her 13th birthday. In the wake of her 13th birthday, he was in prison, central prison at Nainital. From the prison, he was writing the letter because he can't directly meet him. He was writing the letter and giving all the necessary advice and message to his daughter. Right? These letters are intended to mold the character of his young daughter by influencing her mind and spirit, who became a great leader and the first woman Prime Minister of India. So all these letters have played a vital role in shaping the character and personality, a strong personality for herself. And she went on to become one of the greatest women leaders of the world. And in fact, she is the first women Prime Minister of India, and no other women Prime Minister. There are so many women Chief Ministers, but she is the only woman who served the nation as the Prime Minister. So she went on to become a great leader, a strong woman who influenced Indian politics for more than a decade, and she was instrumental in nationalizing banks. And she has taken so many bold decisions, and which are, the fruits of which we are enjoying actually these days. The letter highlights the influence of great leaders. So what is the content of this letter actually? What is the intention behind? What is the message that Nehru wants to convey to his daughter? So letter highlights the influence of great leaders. Great leaders always influence our thought process and mindset. That's one thing. Honesty and fearlessness. One should live his life honestly and fearlessly. You should be bold in your decisions. If you are bold, you will never go on a wrong path. And being open in all things of life, in all the spheres of life, you should be open. You shouldn't do anything secretly. You shouldn't do anything in the darkness. You should do things in the broad daylight and very boldly. Correct? And this is the throwback picture of Nehru, the first Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, the first women Prime Minister. Both are the Prime Ministers. Right? Throwback means the picture which belongs to the yesteryears. So now we move to the lesson actually. So I'll take you to the screen. Just bear with me for a while. Right. Okay, can you see the lesson now? Letter from a father to a daughter. Jawaharlal Nehru, who lived from 1889 to 1964 and served India as the first Prime Minister. Right. So Central Prison 9 means Nainital, October 26th, 1930. So this is in the form of a letter actually, right? So nowadays the block formatted, full block format, all the punctuation, indentation, it starts from the left, but it is in the old fashion. That's why I kept it like that. Had it been the new block format, it should have come here, no commas and no full stops, no punctuation marks. And end of the letter also you should, write your subscript, signature, etc. towards the left only. But this is the old form of writing a letter. I'll just continue with that same format. Central Prison Nainital, October 26, 1930. Right. My dear Indira, this is the greeting. When you write a letter to father, my dear father, dearest friend, like that. My dear Indira, no comma, full stop here. On your birthday, you have been in the habit of receiving presents and good wishes. Okay. During your earlier birthdays, you used to get so many gifts. Everybody receives gifts and they expect gifts from the elders and parents. Good wishes you will still have in full measure, but what present can I send you from Naini prison? Because I am so much away and physically separated from you, okay, I can't give you any material gift, but you will get my good wish in full measure. I shower good wishes on you, but I can't send you any gift or present. How can I send a gift from Naini prison, from the central prison? How can I send? I cannot send. My presents cannot be very material or solid, but I'm going to give you something very, very valuable, but that's not material. You can touch or feel. That is something related to something else. They can only be of the air and of the mind and spirit. such goods as a fairy might have bestowed on you. So the gifts I am going to send you are of what? Abstract nature, but they are not material. Okay, that something belong to your spirit and mind. Okay, that will give you all that is required to nourish your mind and spirit. That is much more important. They are going to give you a vision for your life. That is much more my the wishes, good wishes. Okay, they relate to your mind and spirit. They are much more nobler than the material gifts that generally people tend to send. Okay, things that even the high walls of prison cannot stop. These gifts are not cannot be stopped by the high walls, the strongest walls of the prison. They can just flow to you. Nobody can stop those gifts because we are connected. Though we are physically separated, we are connected mentally and spiritually and in the consciousness. I know, sweetheart, I dislike sermonizing and doling out good advice. So I generally don't like sermonizing or teaching or preaching. My way of dealing with these things is something very different. I don't want to give you any teaching. I don't want to take any class. Don't want to do ask you. I don't want to ask you to do this and that. When I am tempted to do this, I always think of the story of a very wise man I once read. So instead of giving a teaching, do this and that, in this context, I would like to tell you and narrate a story of a great wise man. Perhaps one day you will yourself read the book which contains the story. This story of a great wise man I've read from one of the history books. And when you grow older, you can also read the story from that book yourself. Okay, now is instead of teaching, giving a teaching, is telling a story. So, are you all interested in listening to stories? Yes, it's a very interesting story. 1300 years ago, there came a great traveler from China to India in search of wisdom and knowledge. His name was Huan Sang. Have you heard of Huan Sang, a Chinese traveler in history? 13th century, some 7 or 8 centuries ago. Okay, he came to India in search of wisdom and knowledge, correct? And over the deserts and the mountains of the north, he came braving many dangers, facing and overcoming many obstacles. Overcome many obstacles, he crossed valleys, mountains, etc. With a lot of hardships, he reached India. Okay, so during those days, the transportation facility was very good. You have to cross the mountains in the inclement weather conditions, right? You have to bear, okay, cold weather and hot weather, etc. So great was his thirst for knowledge. Unless a person has a great thirst for knowledge, he doesn't venture to travel to other countries and spend many years in India learning himself and teaching others, especially at the great university of Nalanda, which existed then. Okay, so he traveled across length and breadth of the country and he lived in India for 15 years. He learned so many things. He spent time with so many kings and kingdoms. He observed the way of life, Indian way of life, and he also taught so many things that he has to Indian people. And especially he became a great teacher at Nalanda University, right? Nalanda University, it is near Patna in the state of Bihar, which existed then near the city that used to be called Pataliputra and is now known as Patna. So Nalanda was one of the greatest universities of the world, one of the ancient universities of the world. Nalanda and Pataliputra, Nalanda University and Takshashila. Takshashila is nowadays it's situated in present day Pakistan, but Nalanda is in present day Bihar near the town called Pataliputra. Now it is called as Patna, the capital city of Bihar. Huan Sang became very learned himself and he was given the title of Master of the Universe. So he became so learned. So the law of the Buddha by Buddhist monks, he was given the title Master of the Universe. That means a person knew everything about the universe. okay, the religion, the language, etc., the space, etc. So that such huge was the knowledge of Yuan Sang, and he journeyed all over India and saw and studied the people that live in this great country in those far off days, in those ancient days, some 800 years before. He traveled from the length and the breadth of the country, and he recorded so many things in his book. Later, he wrote a book of his travels, and it is this book which contains the story that comes to my mind. And after going back to his country, he attempted writing a book, and from that book, I'm narrating this story to you. So that is Huan Sung, this great wise man. So, you want to know a little bit more about Huan Sung? Yes, here it is. Huan Sung, a Chinese Buddhist monk, is a Buddhist monk, is a follower of Buddhism, scholar and a traveler who visited India during 630 to 645. So visited India during 630 to 645 for 15 years. AD means in the Christian era, during the reign of Harshavardhana, a famous Indian emperor. He wrote a book called CUK, that means Record of the Western Countries. So India is not a Western country; it's an Eastern country. But he visited all some other countries in the world. That's why the name of the book is CUK. From the CUK, Nehru is narrating the story. Now you're going to see another interesting anecdote. So who is Yuan Sang? Is a Chinese Buddhist monk. You want to see the picture of him? Yes, this is Yuan Sang. Traveler is carrying a large backpack. Okay, Chinese attire. Okay. He got a lot of knowledge from India and all over the world. He was called as master of the universe, right? So, from the book he is narrating, Nehru is narrating an anecdote. It is about a man from South India who came to Karnasavarna, which was a city somewhere near the modern Bhagalpur in Bihar. Okay, in the book what Harshavardhana wrote was, a man from South India came to the present day Bhagalpur in the state of Bihar. And this man, it is written, wore round his waist copper plates, and on his head he carried a lighted torch. He used to wear a strange kind of attire, strange kind of dress. Okay, on his stomach he used to tie copper plates, strangely, and on the head he used to క్యారీ ఎ లైటెడ్ టార్చ్, ఒక కాగడ లాంటి తన తలపైన వెలిగించి నడుస్తూ ఉండేవాడు అన్నట్టు. స్టాఫ్ ఇన్ హ్యాండ్, దట్ మీన్స్ స్టిక్ ఇన్ ద హ్యాండ్. Okay, with proud bearing and lofty steps, he wandered about in this strange attire in the streets of Bhagalpur. Right, he used to walk very majestically, a lot of pride in his manner. Okay, with copper plates tied around his waist, round his stomach, and a torch lighted on his head. When anyone asked him the reason for his curious attire, he told him that his wisdom was so great that he was afraid of his belly. Okay, he was afraid his belly would burst if he did not wear copper plates round it. The one reason why he had worn copper plates was because he had so much of knowledge stored in his belly that if he doesn't tie the copper plates, it would burst out. And because he was moved with pity for the ignorant people round about him who lived in darkness, he carried the light on his head. The second reason why he carried torchlight on his head was he thought that the people around him వర్ సో ఇగ్నోరెంట్. తన చుట్టూన్న ప్రజలందరూ కూడా చాలా అజ్ఞానులు. ఇతని దగ్గర చాలా జ్ఞానం ఉంది. ఆ జ్ఞానము తన కడుపులో నుంచి బయటికి బర్స్ట్ అయి ఓవర్ఫ్లో అవుతుండొచ్చు. కాబట్టి దాన్ని బర్స్ట్ అవ్వలేకుండా కాపర్ ప్లేట్స్ అని అతను బంధించాడు. రెండవది, హెడ్ పైన బర్నింగ్ టార్చ్ ఎందుకు పెట్టుకున్నాడు? తన చుట్టూన్న అజ్ఞానులను ఆ లైట్ తోని అందరినీ కూడా జ్ఞానం వైపు మళ్ళిస్తున్నాడు అన్నట్టు. వెరీ స్ట్రేంజ్, రైట్? ఓకే, so what Nehru is saying in this regard? Well, I'm quite sure that there is no danger of my ever bursting with too much wisdom, and so no need for me to wear copper plates. Okay, as for me, I don't have so much knowledge that won't burst from my stomach. Okay, I don't have any kinds of doubts and apprehensions that my knowledge is not, my knowledge is very limited. Anta నాకు knowledge లేదు. Okay, that won't burst out of my stomach. And in any event, I hope that my wisdom, such as it as I process, does not live in my belly. And I have only limited wisdom, and even that wisdom doesn't lie in my belly. It is somewhere else in my body. Wherever it may reside, there is plenty of room still for more of it, and there is no chance of there being no room left. And even still, wherever it might reside, not even belly, it doesn't reside in belly, wherever it reside. Okay, even if so much knowledge, even I go on accumulating, it doesn't come out of me. Okay, so that is the contention of Nehru. So, however much I learn, I can only learn a little, and that my body can contain it. There is no question of it bursting from out of stomach or out of head or out of any part of my body. If I am so limited in wisdom, how can I pose as a wise man and distribute good advice to others? And so I have always thought that the best way to find out what is right and what is not right, what should be done and what should not be done, is not by giving sermons, but by talking and discussing. And out of discussion, sometimes a little bit of truth comes out. So, as I already told you, I have very little knowledge. Okay, with little knowledge, I can't boast myself as a scholar. Okay, and what is saying? If I am limited in my wisdom, how can I pose as a wise man? I don't say that I am a wise man like the person that Hien Sang wrote in his book. I'm not so wise man. I have very limited knowledge. So what I do, the best thing is, only thing is, through discussion we will decide what is right and what is wrong. Okay, I pose a wise man. So I don't want to give you any good advice. I can't give you any good advice. So what I do is, best way is to find out what is right and what is wrong. Only best thing is, through discussion we will decide what is right and what is wrong. Through discussion a truth comes out, so that you will decide, oh, this may be something good which merits following, which merits our practice. So that is his approach. I don't have so much of knowledge. Only through discussion I arrive at certain truths. That truth we will try to follow in our life. Okay, I'm a simple man. I don't have that much of knowledge, right? I have liked my talks with you, and we have discussed many things. But the world is wide, and beyond our world lie other wonderful and mysterious worlds. So he's saying we have very limited knowledge. Okay, through our previous discussion, when he's talking about discussion, so many times I had discussed with you, right? And I liked these discussions. So we live in a very, very big world, and beyond this world there are so many realms. Okay, not only beyond solar system, we have so many galaxies, and there are so many galaxies. There are innumerable billions of galaxies are part of this universe. It's very difficult to know even a micro speck through your knowledge. Okay, we can only, not even a micro speck you can understand about this universe. So there are so many mysterious worlds. That's what you're saying. So none of us need ever be bored or imagine like the very foolish and conceited person whose story Hien sang, that we have learned everything worth learning and became very wise. So only foolish people like this person who came to Bhagalpur from North India think that I have learnt everything and I have become very wise. But Nehru is saying that the universe is very vast. There are so many mysterious worlds, and there is no danger of becoming a wise person. And there is still a lot can be learned, room for learning. Okay, and perhaps it is as well that we do not become very wise for the very wise. For the very wise, if any such there are, must sometimes feel rather sad, and there is nothing more to learn. One bad thing about becoming wise is, if anybody thinks that I have become wise, there is a negative quality attached to this. Okay, what is that? If you think that you know everything and you stop doing and stop discovering, you don't have any zeal in your life, what happens is that you will suffer boredom. That is the greatest negative quality. If you think that you know everything and you stop learning things, right? So they must miss the joy of discovery and of learning new things. Anybody thinks that he or she is wise, he or she misses the joy of living, the joy of discovery of life. Okay, life is ever learning process, the great adventure that all of us who care to may have. One quality we always want to have is to discover things. Okay, in discovering things you enjoy life, right? If you think that you have nothing to discover, then your life is like a death. It's not, you are no more living, right? I must not therefore sermonize. So that is the reason I don't want to preach anything, do this, that. No, I'm against teaching anything. But what am I to do then? So what I'm going to do through this letter? A letter can hardly take the place of a talk. Now we don't have any opportunity to talk face to face. There is no direct conversation possible now. At best, it is a one-sided affair. So letter is one-sided. I write a letter, you read it. There's only, you can't immediately talk to me. So if I say anything that sounds like a good advice, do not take it as if it were a bad pill to swallow. So anything sounds good, don't take it just like a medicine. Medicine doesn't taste sweet, but still you do that. Simply, if you think that it is good, don't take it. What you have to do is imagine that I have made a suggestion to you to think over as if we really were having a talk. If you think something is good, some idea is good, but think over it. Okay, have a dialogue, inner dialogue within yourself, then only decide. Just like if we were placed face to face, then you could have responded with me directly. The same way you have the mental dialogue, then only you decide. If you still think that it is good to follow, then you take that suggestion and try to practice it. Don't take just by the word go. If something is good, don't go by the word, right? Next is taking up another important thing about India. In history, we read of great periods in the life of nations of great men and women and great deeds performed. In the world history, Indian history, we read about great men, great women, great kings, great warriors, and their great deeds. And sometimes in our dreams and reveries, we imagine ourselves back in those times and doing brave deeds like the heroes and heroines of the world. So when we read those great stories, even we too want to emulate them. We too want to become like that. We too want to perform great deeds like what do you call Alexander or Aristotle and greatest okay legendary figures in the history. You want to become like that. You want to step into their shoes. Okay, because you during daytime and nighttime you dream about them. Why can't I become an Alexander? Why can't I become a world beater like Alexander? Okay, why can't I invent what do you call some celestial things like the value for pi, value for zero, mathematical things. Even you too want to become that. So in your reveries means in your daydreams. It's not possible physically for you, but you in your daydreaming you think that I should become a great warrior like Alexander, a great king like Akbar, great emperor like Ashoka, etc. Right? Do you remember how fascinated you were when you first read the story of Jeanne d'Arc and how your ambition was to be something like her? I still remember that you were fascinated to listen to the story of Jeanne d'Arc, a young woman who fought valiantly against the enemy. She is a French young lady who led the battle against the English people who were trying to conquest French in the War of 100 Years, right? So you wanted to become like Jeanne d'Arc. Okay, I still remember how much you were fascinated and the stuff. Okay. Ordinary men and women are not usually heroic. They think of their daily bread and butter, of their children, of their household worries and the like. Generally, ordinary people don't worry about in their nation what is happening around them. They're only concerned with the children, the day-to-day affairs, and their bread and butter. Okay, they don't generally think above their normal existence. They don't come out of their shells. They simply live very ordinary life. But here, what's Nehru is saying: ordinary men and women are not usually heroic. They think of their daily bread and butter, of their children, of their household worries, and the like. But a time comes when a whole nation becomes full of faith for a great cause, and then even simple, ordinary men and women become heroes, and history becomes stirring and epoch making. Yes, he's telling. But during certain times, when great people come and influence them in every nation, these ordinary becomes come rise to the occasion much beyond their level, much beyond their existence, much beyond their consciousness, and they too become like heroes and heroines. And the history becomes so stirring, and they go on to perform great sacrifices and great deeds for their nation. They think about their nation, they rally behind that great leader, and new history is created. That's why he's saying epoch making history. Epoch means the beginning of an era. New era will be begun in that country due to the participation of all these ordinary men rising phenomenally to greater heights, right? Great leaders have something in them which inspires a whole nation, makes them do good deeds. So that is the role of great leaders. In every country we have great leaders. We have read them in its history. So this is a picture of Jeanne d'Arc. So for the convenience for your understanding, I try to give you the illustration through a picture immediately after the paragraph, right? So you want to see and learn who is Jeanne d'Arc? Yes, Jeanne d'Arc. She lived from 1412 to 1931, barely about 28 years. She sacrificed her life for her nation. Joan of Arc, she is also called Joan of Arc, was France's national heroine who became a saint of the Roman Catholic Church, right? So because of her great sacrifice and martyrdom, she was canonized and made what we call saint. Becoming to the level of saint is the greatest achievement in the Christian religion. We have so many great saints, Saint Francis, etc. So she is one of these women saints, right? Saint of the Roman Catholic Church. That is the greatest achievement. She believed that God had chosen her to free her country from the English. She thought that she has a role to play for her country, and God had chosen her. During 100 Years' War, that war is called 100 Years' War, she repulsed English conquest at Orleans in 1429. Okay, she led the forces of France and repulsed the enemy, English army, and she successfully defended her country. That is the greatness of Jeanne d'Arc. She was Jeanne d'Arc, as you can see in the picture. It's continuing our lesson. The year you were born in 1917 is giving another example. The year you were born in 1917 was one of the memorable years of history when a great leader with a heart full of love and sympathy for the poor and suffering, made his people write a noble and never to be forgotten chapter of his history. Another person with a lot of love for his country, for his poor people. Okay, he led the people in a rightful direction, and because of this gigantic effort, they were successful enough in writing never to be forgotten and great chapter in the history of their country. Who is that person? So here is telling, in the very month in which you are born. So Indira Gandhi was born in the month of October 1919 something. So very month Lenin started the great revolution which has changed the face of Russia and Siberia. So this is the influence of another great leader from Russia. Who is that person? Lenin. You want to know a little bit more about Lenin? Yes. The Lenin is, full name is Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, popularly called as Vladimir Lenin or simply Lenin, who lived between 1870 to 1924. He lived for about 54 years, right? the great Russian leader who founded the Communist Party in Russia. He is the founder of Communist Party. Okay, Communist Party recorded so much success and that transformed the life of Russians in the greatest way possible. He led the October Revolution of 1917, in which communists seized power in Russia. So because of his efforts, because he had influenced the common people of Russia, common Russian people, he successfully, established a very, very communist and social form of government in the October Revolution 1917. Right? Earlier, there used to be the reign of czars, the emperors. There is a lot of dictatorship. He brought great change in the lives of the people because of his unstinted efforts, and this was possible because he had love and sympathy towards his people. This is one great leader. And today in India, now we are coming to India now. Today in India, and another great leader, also full of love for all who suffer and passionately eager to help them, has inspired our people to great endeavor and noble sacrifice so that they may again be free, and the story and the poor and the oppressed may have their burdens removed from them. So another leader from India, one of the greatest leaders, is not only a political leader, he is a spiritual leader of India. So who he inspired? Gandhiji. Who is that? He inspired people to make sacrifices, to come and participate in the national movement. Everybody took his advice. Even if he gave a call from the prison, also they followed him. So the intention behind it was to liberate India from the colonial rule, to liberate India from the foreign rule and grant her the freedom, the rightful freedom. So who is this? Bapuji. Gandhiji is also called as Bapuji very fondly by all Indians. So Bapuji lies in prison, but the magic of his message steals into the hearts of India's millions, and men and women and even little children come out of their shells and become India's soldiers of freedom. So that is the influence of great leaders. If a great leader gives a call or asks the people to do something, even if any nook and corner, that message passes into millions and millions of people, and they do it in spirit and letter. When Gandhiji gave a call to prepare salt, everybody prepared salt in the salt movement. When Gandhiji wanted to burn foreign goods, everybody burned foreign goods and started using khadi clothes. Right? So that is the greatness of Gandhiji, another great leader from India. So now we want to see, I don't want to tell you anything about Gandhiji, we all know. So Mahatma Gandhi, Gandhiji is called Mahatma. Okay? Rabindranath Tagore called him as Mahatma. So Bapuji, 1869 to 1949, right? He died after 1 year of India achieving freedom. Father of India, who led Indian independence struggle by employing non-violent resistance. That too, he led India in a very, very different fashion. Unlike in other countries, it is a revolution of blood and we call war. But India, nothing happened. Okay, he won freedom in a peaceful manner and got freedom from the British rule. Okay, this is the picture of Gandhiji or Bapuji, father of our nation. So let us conclude this. In India today, you are making history, and you and I are fortunate to see this happening before our eyes and to take some part ourselves in this great drama. So we should feel proud that we are part of this great endeavor. We are part of this happening history. We are fortunate that we are very much in the thick of this happening, in the thick of this development that is happening all across the country. We are involved so deeply in Indian independence struggle, and we must deliver our job. We must participate in this as if it is very, very sacred work. So how shall we bear ourselves in this great moment? What is the role? How we should conduct ourselves? What should be our behavior? What should be our character in this great moment? Nehru is again speaking on this. Okay, what part shall we play in it? I can't say what part will fall to our lot, but whatever it may be, let us remember that we can do nothing which may bring discredit to our cause or dishonor to our people. Whatever is the work, I can't say this work or this work, whatever work comes to you, whatever agitational movement you might have to do, I can't say, but whatever is the work, we must do anything that doesn't, we must not do anything that doesn't bring anything that brings dishonor to our country. We must do anything that elevates the honor of our country, the reputation of our country. We shouldn't do anything that damages the greatness, the great principles India had followed for so many centuries. That we should keep in our mind. We should always do something honorable that would definitely elevate the spirit, elevate our image among the nations. If we are to be India's soldiers, we have India's honor in our keeping, and that is a sacred trust. So, if you really want to take part as a true soldier of India, what you should do? You should keep India's manner at the highest. Okay, that is the guiding principle, and you should do it as in sacred trust. Right? There is no room for mischievous people and non-serious people participating in Indian freedom struggle. Unless you are sacred about, unless you have respect for this movement, you cannot join this. You should have all the respect and trust in what is happening. You should be held in great reverence. Okay, you should take it as a spiritual work, not simple, okay, useless work. Often we may be in doubts as to what to do. It is no easy matter to decide what is right and what is not. One little test I shall ask you to apply whenever you are in doubt. It may help you. Now, one final suggestion is giving that when you are participating in the freedom struggle or when you are doing your work or any kind of ordinary work, whenever you are in a doubt whether you are going on a right way or a wrong way, the only test is, okay, he is giving a test. You apply the test to yourself and decide whether you are on the right track or wrong track. That will help you. So what is the method? What is the test? Never do anything in secret or anything that you would wish to hide. Whatever you want to do, if you are doing the right thing, you are always open. You never hide things. If you think that you should not tell others, you shouldn't do it openly, then you are already on the wrong path. You should immediately come back and change your decision. Okay, there is no room for secrecy. For the desire to hide anything means that you are afraid and here is a bad thing and unworthy of you. Yes. So as a result of your testing, you notice that you want to hide it. Don't want to reveal it to others. Just you want to do this. That itself is the test that you are on the wrong path and you are afraid of doing that. That is the fundamental thing. The first instance, you are afraid. And here is a bad thing and unworthy of you. Another indication. You are doing something which doesn't befit, it doesn't deserve to be done. It is unworthy. Immediately you will notice and immediately come out of that. Okay? If you are, so what happens then? Be brave and all the rest follows. If you can check this and follow this and apply this to your course of action, what happens? You don't have to hide anything. You are automatically brave and the rest follows. You will be always on the right track and definitely you will, okay, achieve success and win laurels from others. If you are brave and you will not fear and will not do anything of which you are ashamed, that is in our great freedom movement under Bapuji's leadership. There is no room for secrecy or hiding. Okay. So if you are brave, what happens? You are not in fear and you are not ashamed. And especially in the Indian freedom struggle, which is led by the greatest leader of the world, we can say, Bapuji, we shouldn't do anything that damages, anything that belittles India's reputation. Okay, remember that you are under Gandhi's leadership. Okay, don't do any kind of unworthy things or shameful things, right? There is no room for secrecy and hiding. You cannot hide anything and you cannot do things in secrecy and darkness. That is wrong way of doing things. That is one test you have to follow. Okay, we have nothing to hide. While fighting against British, you need not hide. You are asking for the rightful thing. India is our country. We should rule. You can boldly ask for things and your rights. You have to rule your country. There is nothing to hide. We are not afraid to do what we do and say what we say. Okay, we need not be afraid of anything to do or say because we are asking for the rightful thing. We work in the sun and in the light. Even so, in our private lives, let us make friends with the sun and work in the light and do nothing secretly and furtively. So, our attitude should be we should work in the sun and work in the light. That is the guiding principle. Must do it in everything in the broad daylight. Okay, we need not do anything secretly and furtively. Furtively means stealthily, like a cat. Cat enters into the room and everybody was sleeping in the darkness and eats whatever it wants and moves away. So you should not live like that. You should be bold and do things in the light, in the sunshine. Privacy, of course, privacy is life. Privacy is another thing. In our private lives, let us make friends. Privacy is there in private life. Private life is something very different. So what Nehru is saying is, privacy, of course, we may have and should have, but that is a very different thing from secrecy. When I'm talking about you do not need not do things in secrecy, that doesn't mean that you don't have a private life. Private life is something individual. You eat your own food, you dress whatever dress you want, you follow your own religion, you talk the way you want. When it comes to the public affairs, when you're fighting the war, there is no room for secrecy, right? So privacy and secrecy is something too different. They belong to two different realms actually. And if you do so, my dear, you will grow up a child of the light. So if you are bold and if you always do things in sunlight, what happens? You will be growing into a child of the light, unafraid and serene. You will become a very very courageous child. Serene, you will be very very peaceful and calm in your endeavors and unruffled whatever may happen. If you are on the right path, if you have courage, if you are doing things openly, then you are not disturbed by anything. Suppose any setback comes, okay, any failure comes, minor failures are part of life, you are not afraid. You are totally focused on your goal and you keep going even in the bad condition, bad situations. When the chips are down, you will be always focused on your target. So what Nehru is saying that work in the sun and in the night and in the light. And we should also in our private lives let us make friends with the sun and work in the light. You should make friends with the sun means you have to befriend the sun, okay, and work. Sun should be your friend, not the night should be your friend. You should do things in the dark, in the night. In the night means not that during night time. Even if it's night or day, the thing is you should do things boldly and openly, right? Not just daytime. It may be night time also. You can plan during night time also. But still, what is the meaning of making friends with sun? It is your boldness and your faith that you are doing the right thing. Okay. The last part of the letter, the last paragraph. I have written a very long letter to you, and yet there is so much I would like to tell you. Already, I dwelled so much on this topic. How to conduct yourselves, how to test that you are on the right path, what is the influence of great leaders. Okay. There is so much I want to tell you still. How can a letter contain it? A small letter can't contain all the thoughts I want to share with you. Only limited, to a limited extent I'm sharing my thoughts with you, but letter is only a poor medium which cannot fulfill the direct talk, which is not equal to your direct talk. The letter is a letter anyway, so I have to stop here. You're fortunate, I have said, in being a witness to this great struggle for freedom that is going on in our country. You are also very fortunate in having a very brave and wonderful little woman for your mommy. You are fortunate in two ways. One is you are taking part in this great struggle for freedom. That's one thing. You are fortunate enough. Second thing is you have a wonderful woman to be your mommy. Your mommy is a wonderful woman. That is the greatest gift that you can have in your life. Yes. And if you are ever in doubt or in trouble, you cannot have a better friend. So whenever you are in trouble, whenever you are in some kind of what you call in a bad condition, when you cannot take decisions, when you have failures or some kind of disappointed situations, then always your mom is with you. You can't have a better person than your mommy, who is a wonderful woman. Is not only your mother, she is also like a philosopher, guide, and friend. So that is another greatest fortune that you can have your life. So you must cherish that situation. So finally, goodbye little one, and may you grow up into a brave soldier in India's service. Finally, he is wishing his daughter that she should grow to be a great person and serve India in her future years. With all my love and good wishes. Your loving father, Jawaharlal Nehru. So he's finally by wishing her all good luck and wishing that she should become a great warrior and great soldier in India's service. He is winding up his letter. So this is one of the letters from the book Letters from a Father to His Daughter. Okay, so this is the actual text from your textbook. So how do you like this letter? What do you learn out of it? So intention of the Nehru was to mold and shape up her personality. He wants her to become a very great leader, and she should be tough in all difficult situations. That is the intention, and he has succeeded in his efforts because she also, true to his wishes, lived up to his expectations. She went on to become the first women Prime Minister of India. Right? So have you liked this video? Thank you all, boys and girls, for your time. Do like, share, and subscribe this channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon. We shall meet again in another interesting video. Until then, take care.